I woke up to the sound of a heart monitor beeping. That is the first thing I remember after 47 days of darkness. 47 days of floating somewhere between this world and the next. 47 days where my soul couldn't decide whether to stay or leave. My name is Harold Mitchell. Most folks call me Hal. I am 65 years old, a retired master sergeant who served 22 years in the United States Army. I did 2 tours in Vietnam and 1 in the Gulf. I've seen things that would make most men lose their minds. I've held dying soldiers in my arms, whispered lies to them about how everything would be okay, watched the light fade from their eyes in jungles and deserts thousands of miles from home. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what I was about to discover when I finally made it home from that hospital. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment when my life shattered into a million pieces. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, when I collapsed in my backyard in Nashville. Linda and I had been married for 41 years. 41 years of building a life together, raising 2 kids, surviving deployments and homecomings, arguments and reconciliations. She was hanging laundry on the line. She always insisted on sun-dried sheets, even though we had a perfectly good dryer. When I felt the first squeeze in my chest, I remember thinking it felt like someone had reached inside my ribcage and grabbed my heart with an iron fist. I tried to call out to her, but no words came. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the white sheet billowing in the wind, like a surrender flag. Massive heart attack. That is what they told me later. My heart had stopped for 4 minutes before the paramedics got it beating again. 4 minutes of clinical death. They put me in a medically induced coma to give my brain time to heal from the oxygen deprivation. 47 days. I slept. 47 days of machines breathing for me, tubes feeding me, nurses turning me every few hours so I wouldn't get bed sores. When I finally opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the fluorescent light above my bed. It hummed and flickered in that particular way that hospital lights do. The second thing I noticed was the smell. That unmistakable mixture of antiseptic and illness that no amount of cleaning can ever fully mask. The empty chair beside my bed. I looked around the ICU ward. 4 beds, 4 patients. All of us hooked up to machines that beeped and whooshed and clicked in a mechanical symphony of survival. The man to my left had a woman sitting beside him, holding his hand, whispering something I couldn't hear. Probably prayers, probably promises. The patient across from me had 3 people crowded around his bed. Looked like adult children. Maybe grandchildren too. But my chair, empty. Where was Linda? Where were my children? Jason and Karen. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed over. Young woman couldn't have been more than 30, with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Destiny. Fitting name for someone who works in a place where fate hangs in the balance every single day. Mr. Mitchell. Oh, my goodness. You are awake. Let me page the doctor right away. This is wonderful news. She fussed over me, checking vitals, adjusting tubes, asking me questions to assess my cognitive function. What is your name? What year is it? Who is the president? I answered everything correctly, though my voice came out as a ragged whisper, my throat raw from weeks of intubation. Is my wife here? I managed to croak. Destiny's smile flickered for just a moment, just a fraction of a second. But I've spent a lifetime reading people's faces in high-stakes situations. I saw it, that tiny hesitation, that micro-expression of discomfort. Let me check with the front desk about your visitors, she said, her voice a little too bright. You just focus on resting, okay? But I couldn't rest. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. The same instinct that had kept me alive through 2 wars was screaming at me now. Over the next few days, I regained my strength. They moved me out of the ICU and into a regular room. I was able to sit up, then stand, then take shuffling walks down the hallway with a physical therapist who kept telling me how amazing my progress was for a man my age. But still no Linda. I tried calling her cell phone. Straight to voicemail. Every single time. I tried Jason's number. My son lived in Phoenix with his wife and 2 kids. Voicemail. I tried Karen, my daughter up in Chicago. Voicemail, 41 years of marriage. 2 children I had raised, sacrificed for. Worked double shifts to put through college. and not one of them could be bothered to answer their phones while I was lying in a hospital bed, recovering from a near-death experience. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Linda's phone was broken. Maybe there was a family emergency I didn't know about. Maybe. But the excuses were getting harder to believe. One evening, about a week before my discharge, Destiny came into my room looking nervous. She closed the door behind her, which immediately put me on alert. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to tell you something. I probably shouldn't, but, well, my daddy was Army too, 82nd Airborne. He always said veterans look out for each other." I nodded, waiting. "You asked about visitors. I checked the logs." She pulled out a small notepad. "You did have visitors, 4 of them. They came 6 days ago, stayed for about an hour." My heart rate picked up. The monitor beside me started beeping faster. 4. Who were they? 4 men. All older gentlemen. They left a note with their contact information in case you woke up. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "But Mr. Mitchell, your wife never came, not once. I checked all 47 days of visitor logs. Her name isn't there." The room started spinning. 47 days. My wife of 41 years hadn't visited me once in 47 days while I lay dying in a hospital bed. I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. 4 names, 4 phone numbers. Bobby Garcia, Earl Washington, Frank DeLuca, Ray Kowalski. My brothers, not by blood, but by something deeper. We had served together in Vietnam, survived the hell of the Tet Offensive together, promised each other that if we made it home alive, we would stay connected forever. Life had gotten in the way over the years, families, jobs, moves across the country. But these men had somehow found out I was in the hospital and had come to see me, while my own wife hadn't. "There is something else," Destiny said quietly. "I talked to my supervisor. Because you are a veteran, and because, well, because this situation seemed wrong, she agreed to let me show you the security footage from that visit." She pulled out a tablet and pressed play. I watched 4 old men walk into my hospital room. Bobby had gotten heavier since I last saw him. Earl was using a cane now. Frank's hair had gone completely white. Ray still had that same purposeful stride he'd had 50 years ago in the jungle. They stood around my bed, talking to my unconscious body. Bobby wiped tears from his eyes. Earl said something that made the others bow their heads. Probably a prayer. These men I hadn't spoken to in years, had somehow learned I was dying and had traveled to Nashville to say goodbye. And Linda, who had shared my bed for 4 decades, nowhere to be found. "How did they know I was here?" I asked. "Bobby Garcia's daughter works here. She is a surgical nurse. She recognized your name when you were admitted and called her father. He called the others. They drove in from 4 different states, Mr. Mitchell." I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. I hadn't cried since Vietnam, hadn't allowed myself to, but lying in that hospital bed, realizing that brotherhood meant more than marriage, that promises made in foxholes meant more than vows made at altars, something broke inside me. Or maybe something finally healed. The day I was discharged, I felt like a ghost. The doctors had given me a clean bill of health, well, as clean as it could be for a 65-year-old man who died and come back. New medications, dietary restrictions, follow-up appointments, scheduled for the next 6 months. But physically, I was okay. Mentally, I was a wreck. I took a taxi home. Our house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a quiet neighborhood on the east side of Nashville, looked exactly the same from the outside. Same red brick, same white shutters, same old oak tree in the front yard that I'd planted when Jason was born. But something felt different, wrong. The way a place feels when it has been disturbed, when the energy has shifted. I paid the driver and walked up the path with my small bag of belongings. The hospital had given me a plastic bag with the clothes I'd been wearing when I was admitted. Jeans, flannel shirt. Everything else, I assumed, was inside the house. I rang the doorbell. Waited. Nothing. I knocked. Hard, 3 times. Still nothing. My hands were shaking as I reached into my bag for my keys. They were still there, right where they'd been in my jeans pocket 47 days ago. I slid the key into the lock, turned it, and pushed open the door. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Different. Not bad. Just not ours. Linda had always kept fresh flowers on the entryway table, roses in summer, chrysanthemums in fall. That scent was gone, replaced by something else. Air freshener. The generic kind. The second thing I noticed was the furniture. Our old couch, the brown leather one we'd bought when Jason graduated high school, was gone. In its place was a blue sectional I'd never seen before. The coffee table was different. The curtains were different. Even the paint on the wall seemed lighter than I remembered. Candles on a birthday cake. Where were our photos? Our wedding picture. The shots of Jason and Karen as kids. My military portraits. I reached the wall where I'd always displayed my medals. My Bronze Star. My Purple Heart. My unit citations and campaign ribbons. The wall was bare. Just 2 small nail holes where the shadow box had hung for 20 years. My legs felt weak. I steadied myself against the wall, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Had I gone to the wrong house? Had the coma affected my memory more than the doctors thought? But no, this was my house. I knew every inch of it. The crack in the ceiling by the bathroom door. The squeaky floorboard at the end of the hall. The way the afternoon light came through the kitchen window. This was my home. So why did it feel like I was trespassing? I decided to make myself some coffee. I needed caffeine. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what was happening before I completely lost my mind. I walked back to the kitchen, found the coffee maker, different model, but same location, and started searching for grounds. That is when I heard it. A cough. Deep, rattling, distinctly male, coming from my bedroom. I froze. Every muscle in my body went rigid. The sound came again, a wet, phlegmy cough that spoke of age and illness. There was a man in my bedroom, in the bed I had shared with my wife for 41 years. The next few seconds felt like hours. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Linda had moved on. Linda had found someone else. While I was lying in a coma, fighting for my life, my wife had brought another man into our home, into our bed. 41 years. 41 years of faithfulness. Even during those long deployments, when loneliness gnawed at both of us. 41 years of choosing each other every single day, and she had thrown it all away in 47 days. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Worse than the heart attack. Worse than anything I'd ever experienced in combat. Because this wasn't an enemy trying to kill me. This was the woman I loved. The woman I had trusted with my life, my heart, my everything, stabbing me in the back while I lay helpless in a hospital bed. Blood roaring in my ears. Fists clenched. Ready to confront whatever I found. Ready to drag some strange man out of my bed and demand answers. I threw open the door and stopped. The man in my bed was old. Older than me, maybe 70 or 75. Thin white hair, pale papery skin, oxygen tube running under his nose, connected to a portable tank beside the bed. He was wearing striped pajamas and looked absolutely terrified. Beside him, clutching the blankets to her chest, was a woman of similar age, reading glasses perched on her nose, a romance novel fallen to the floor beside the bed. This was not what I expected. "Who the hell are you?" I shouted. The old man fumbled for something on the nightstand, his glasses, and shoved them onto his face. His wife, I assumed she was his wife, let out a small shriek. "Who are you?" The man shot back, his voice quavering but defiant. "This is our home. How did you get in here?" "Your home." "This is my home. I've lived here for 23 years. "That is impossible. We bought this house 6 weeks ago." We stared at each other. 2 old men, both convinced the other was an intruder. both terrified, both confused. The woman reached for the phone on her nightstand. "I am calling the police." "Wait," I said, holding up my hands. "Wait, please. Something is very wrong here. I am not going to hurt you. I need to understand what is happening." The man. I noticed now how frail he looked, how his hands trembled as he clutched the blankets, studied my face. Something in my expression must have convinced him I wasn't a threat. "Marge, hold on," he said to his wife. "Let's hear him out." I took a deep breath. "My name is Harold Mitchell. I am a veteran. I've owned this house since 2001. 6 weeks ago, I had a massive heart attack. I've been in a coma at the VA hospital ever since. I was discharged today. I came home, and everything is different. You are here. My wife is gone. My things are gone." The man's face softened. "You are Harold Mitchell, the veteran?" "Yes." "Dear God," he exchanged a look with his wife. "Marge, get the folder, the purchase documents." Marge climbed out of bed. She was wearing a quilted housecoat and shuffled to the closet. She returned with a manila folder and handed it to her husband. "My name is Walter Patterson," the man said. "This is my wife, Marge. We moved here from Ohio after I retired. We bought this house 6 weeks ago." He pulled a document from the folder and handed it to me. "From a woman named Linda Mitchell." I stared at the paper. Property deed. Transfer of ownership. My address. And there, at the bottom, a signature. Linda Mitchell. Except it wasn't Linda's signature. I'd seen my wife's handwriting tens of thousands of times over 4 decades. Birthday cards, grocery lists, love notes tucked into my luggage before deployments. This signature was close. Someone had obviously tried to copy it. But it wasn't hers. Number wait. That wasn't right either. I looked closer. The signature was Linda's, but the other signature, the one that was supposed to be mine, authorizing the sale of our jointly owned home, was a forgery, a bad one. The Harold Mitchell scrawled on that line looked nothing like my actual signature. My wife had forged my signature. She had sold our house while I lay dying. She had taken everything, our furniture, our photos, my medals, my entire life, and disappeared. "Mr. Mitchell?" Walter's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Mr. Mitchell, are you all right?" I wasn't all right. I was very far from all right. My wife hadn't cheated on me with another man. She'd done something worse. She'd erased me entirely. She'd looked at me lying in that hospital bed, decided I was going to die, and rather than wait to find out, rather than hold my hand and hope for a miracle, she had cashed out. She had stolen my home, my possessions, my identity. She had taken 41 years of marriage and thrown them away like garbage. I sank into a chair, Walter, and Marge's chair now, I supposed, and put my head in my hands. "I think," I said slowly, "that I need to make a phone call." I sat in Walter and Marge Patterson's living room, my living room, once upon a time, with a cup of tea I couldn't drink and a phone in my hand that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The Pattersons had been remarkably kind, considering I'd just burst into their bedroom like a madman. Once they understood the situation, Marge had insisted on making tea while Walter showed me all the purchase documents. Every page was another knife in my gut. Linda had sold the house for $285,000, below market value, but quick cash. The sale had closed just 3 weeks after my heart attack, while I was still unconscious in the ICU. She'd used a power of attorney document, also forged to authorize the transaction without my presence. 23 years of mortgage payments. 23 years of maintenance, repairs, improvements. The new roof I'd installed myself 2 summers ago. The deck I'd built with my own hands. The garden where Linda grew tomatoes and peppers every year. All gone. Sold to strangers. Because my wife had decided I was already dead. "Mr. Mitchell," Walter said gently, "you should call someone, family, friends. You shouldn't be alone right now. He was right. But who could I call? My children weren't answering their phones, which now made a terrible kind of sense. They were probably in on it. Or at the very least, they'd chosen her side without waiting to see if I'd wake up. Then I remembered the piece of paper in my pocket. 4 names. 4 numbers. 4 brothers who'd driven across the country to see me when my own family couldn't be bothered. I dialed the first number. Bobby Garcia answered on the second ring. Hello? Bobby. It is Hal. Hal Mitchell. 3 seconds of silence. Then, Hal. Holy Mother of God, Hal. You are awake. You are alive. I could hear the emotion cracking his voice. This man, this friend, I hadn't seen in years before he showed up at my hospital bed, was crying with joy because I was alive. I am awake, Bobby. I am alive. But I am in trouble. Big trouble. Tell me everything. So I did. Right there in the Pattersons' living room, I told Bobby the whole story. The empty visitor logs, coming home to find strangers in my bed, the forged signatures, Linda's disappearance. When I finished, Bobby was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Where are you right now?" "Still at the house. The new owners let me stay to make some calls." "Don't move. I am 45 minutes away." I moved to Clarksville after Betty passed. I am coming to get you right now and Hal. Yay. We're going to fix this. All of us, together. Just like the old days. He hung up before I could respond. 40 minutes later, a silver Ford -150 pulled into the driveway. Bobby Garcia climbed out heavier than I remembered, his black hair now silver, but still with that same determined set to his jaw that I'd seen in the jungles of Vietnam when everything was going to hell and we needed someone to take charge. He walked straight up to me and pulled me into a bear hug that nearly cracked my ribs. "You son of a bitch," he whispered. "We thought we'd lost you. Takes more than a heart attack to kill me, apparently so." He pulled back and looked at me with wet eyes. "Come on, let's get you out of here. You are staying with me until we figure this out." I thanked the Pattersons, apologized again for scaring them, and promised I'd be in touch about the legal situation with the house. Walter shook my hand firmly. "I am sorry this happened to you, Mr. Mitchell. Truly. And for what it is worth, I was Navy. USS Coral Sea, 68 to 72. I know what you boys went through over there. Whatever you need, you let us know, Navy man." That explained why he'd given me the benefit of the doubt instead of calling the cops. "Thank you, Walter. I'll be in touch." Bobby drove me to his house in Clarksville, a small ranch-style home with an American flag flying out front and a Purple Heart license plate frame. Inside, it was clean but sparse. The home of a man who'd lost his wife and was still figuring out how to live alone. Betty passed 3 years ago, Bobby said, reading my expression. "Cancer. She went quick, at least. That is something." "I am sorry, Bobby. I should have called. I should have been there." He waved his hand dismissively. "Life gets in the way. What matters is we're here now." He gestured to the couch. "Sit. I already called the others. They're on their way." "What do you mean, on their way?" Bobby grinned. "Emergency reunion. Just like the old days. Earl's driving up from Birmingham. Frank's flying in from Tampa. Ray's actually closest. He has been living in Bowling Green for the past 5 years. They'll all be here by tonight." I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been wound tight since I woke up in that hospital room. "Bobby, why? Why did you all come to see me in the hospital? How did you even know?" He sat down across from me in a worn recliner. "My daughter, Maria. You remember her? Little girl with pigtails who used to call you Uncle. I remember. She is a surgical nurse at Vanderbilt now. Been there 15 years. When you came in, your name went through the system, and she recognized it. Called me right away. He paused. She also noticed something else. Your emergency contact was listed as your wife, but your wife never showed up. Never called. Nothing. Maria thought that was strange. So she dug a little deeper, found out no family members had visited at all. So you drove all the way to Nashville just because? Just because. Bobby's voice hardened. Hal, we made a promise. All 5 of us. The 15th of September, 1969, after that ambush at DAC 2. We were the only ones from our squad who made it out alive. We sat in that field hospital and we swore. We swore on the blood of our brothers who didn't make it, that we would never abandon each other. Never. God help me. I remembered every second of that day. The screams, the gunfire, the smell of smoke and blood and fear. And afterward, 5 young men holding hands in a circle, making promises they intended to keep for the rest of their lives. 55 years, Bobby continued. We haven't always been good about staying in touch, but that promise, that is forever. When Maria told me you were dying alone in that hospital, there was no force on earth that could have kept me away. Same for Earl, Frank, and Ray. We dropped everything. We came. And Linda never showed up. We asked the nurses, we checked the logs, nothing. At first we thought maybe she didn't know. Maybe something had happened to her too. But then we started asking around. Your neighbors said she'd been packing up the house. Moving trucks came and went. She was emptying the place out while you were still in a coma. The betrayal hit fresh, all over again. She thought I was going to die. No, Bobby said quietly. There is a difference. One is fear. The other is choice. We sat in silence for a moment, letting that truth settle between us. What am I going to do, Bobby? She took everything. The house, our savings, God. I don't even know what else. My VA disability payments were going into a joint account. If she has been withdrawing from that. First, we gather the troops. Then, we assess the situation. Then, we make a plan. Bobby stood up. Right now, you need to eat something. When's the last time you had real food? And I don't mean hospital jello. I couldn't remember. It has been a while. That is what I thought. I am making burgers. You are eating. Then you are sleeping. Tomorrow, we figure out how to get your life back. By 8 o'clock that night, they'd all arrived. Earl Washington came first, tall, thin, walking with a cane now, but still with that same quiet dignity he'd always carried. He'd been our squad's medic, the calmest man under fire I'd ever known. He'd saved my life twice in Vietnam. Once when I took shrapnel to the leg. Once when I got jungle fever, so bad I couldn't remember my own name. Hal Mitchell, he said, embracing me carefully. Lazarus himself, rising from the dead. Not quite dead yet, Earl. Number not yet, not ever. If we have anything to say about it. Frank DeLuca arrived next, straight from Tampa International. He'd always been the loudest of our group, the one who dealt with fear by cracking jokes and picking fights. Age had mellowed him some, but I could still see that spark of reckless energy in his eyes. What kind of woman sells a man's house while he is in a coma? Frank demanded, after Bobby had filled him in. What kind of cold-blooded snake does something like that? The kind who thought she could get away with it, I said. Well, she thought wrong. Ray Kowalski was the last to arrive. Quiet, methodical Ray, who'd been our point man because he had an almost supernatural ability to sense danger before it arrived. He walked in, looked at me for a long moment, and simply nodded. Good to see you, Hal. Good to see you too, Ray. That was Ray. Never wasted a word. We sat around Bobby's kitchen table. 5 old men who'd once been young soldiers, and we talked. I told them everything. Every detail about waking up, about the hospital, about coming home to find strangers in my bed. They listened without interrupting, their faces growing darker with each new revelation. When I finished, it was Ray who spoke first. We need more information before we can act. Where did Linda go? Where is the money from the house sale? Has she been withdrawing from your accounts? What about your children? Are they involved, or are they victims too? I've been trying to reach Jason and Karen for days. Nothing. That is suspicious, Earl said. But it doesn't mean they're part of it. Could be Linda told them a story. Told them you were definitely going to die, or that you wanted them to stay away, or something else. Manipulators manipulate. It is what they do. Frank slammed his palm on the table. What we need is someone who can actually investigate this. Someone with resources. Someone who can track her down and find out what she did with Hal's money. Bobby smiled. Funny, you should mention that. We all looked at him. My son Marcus, you all remember Marcus. Skinny kid who was always taking apart electronics? I remember, I said. Smart boy, quiet. He is not a boy anymore. He is a 42-year-old FBI special agent, works out of the Nashville field office. Bobby's smile widened, and when I told him what happened to you, Hal, he was very interested in helping. FBI for a domestic dispute? This isn't a domestic dispute, Earl said slowly. This is fraud, forgery, theft. Possibly elder abuse, depending on how the law looks at it. Those are federal crimes, Hal. Linda's not some criminal mastermind. She is my wife. She was probably just scared and made bad decisions. Ray shook his head. A scared person doesn't forge signatures. A scared person doesn't sell a house in 3 weeks. A scared person doesn't clean out bank accounts and disappear. That is not fear. That is a plan. I wanted to argue. 41 years of marriage doesn't just evaporate overnight. The Linda I knew, the Linda I'd loved, couldn't be capable of something this calculated. But the evidence was the evidence. And my gut, that same gut that had kept me alive through 2 wars, was telling me Ray was right. This wasn't impulse. This was premeditated. The question was, how long had she been planning it? Marcus Garcia looked exactly like his father must have looked at 42, same stocky build, same sharp brown eyes, same no-nonsense demeanor. But where Bobby had been infantry, Marcus had the quiet intensity of a man who spent his days tracking down criminals and building cases. He came to Bobby's house the next morning, dressed in a casual polo shirt and khakis off duty, but carrying a leather folder that looked very much like business. Mr. Mitchell, he said, shaking my hand. My father told me about your situation. I want you to know that officially, I can't investigate this as an FBI matter unless there is evidence of federal crimes. But unofficially, he smiled, and it was a cold smile. My father and his friends saved a lot of lives in Vietnam, including the life of a man named Thomas Garcia, my grandfather. He died in '85. But he always talked about the brothers who brought him home. So unofficially, I am going to help you any way I can. I appreciate that, Marcus. More than you know. Let's start with what we have. He opened his folder and spread several documents across the table. I did some preliminary digging last night. Here is what I found. He pointed to the first document. This is the property deed transfer for your house. Signed by Linda Mitchell and Harold Mitchell, except I was in a coma. Exactly. I had a buddy in the documents unit take a quick look at this signature. Unofficial opinion. It is a forgery. Not even a good one. The letter formations are inconsistent, and the pen pressure is all wrong, so the sale is fraudulent. But here is where it gets complicated. He pointed to another document. This is a power of attorney, dated 2 weeks before your heart attack. It gives Linda full authority to manage all your financial and property affairs. And this signature. He looked at me. This one's real? I stared at the document. I don't remember signing this. Think hard. The 28th of September. Did you sign anything that day? The 28th of September, 2 weeks before the heart attack. I tried to remember. Linda had come to me with some papers, something about updating our wills, she'd said. I'd been tired after a long day and hadn't read everything carefully, just signed where she pointed. Son of a bitch, I whispered. She planned this, Ray said quietly. At least 2 weeks in advance. She had you sign the power of attorney, then she just had to wait for the right opportunity. You think she knew he was going to have a heart attack? Frank asked. No, Marcus said. But I think she was prepared to leave regardless. The heart attack just gave her the perfect cover. Widows get sympathy. Women who abandon healthy husbands get scrutiny. The room fell silent as we all processed this. My wife hadn't just betrayed me in a moment of panic. She'd been setting the trap for weeks, maybe months. The heart attack hadn't caused her betrayal. It had just revealed it. What else did you find? I asked. Marcus pulled out another sheet. I tracked Linda's financial activity through some database queries. Nothing illegal. This is all public record stuff if you know where to look. The $285,000 from the house sale was deposited into your joint account, then transferred out within 48 hours to a new account in her name only. Where did it go from there? That is where it gets interesting. The money was wired to a real estate escrow account in Phoenix, Arizona, where my son Jason lived. She is buying property in Phoenix. Looks like it. A condo, from what I can tell. Purchase price, $340,000. She is putting down a significant down payment, probably the full amount from your house sale, and financing the rest. So she didn't just run off with my money. She is using it to buy herself a new life, close to your son, Earl added. Which means either Jason is helping her or she is using him as cover. I didn't want to believe my son was involved. Jason had always been a good kid, responsible, hard-working, devoted to his family. But he'd also always been closer to his mother than to me. Deployments will do that. You miss birthdays, school plays, football games. Your wife fills the gaps. And eventually, the kids see her as the stable one, and you as the visitor who comes and goes. Had Linda been poisoning him against me for years? Or had she simply told him a convenient lie? That I was brain dead, or that I'd told her to sell the house, or that I'd wanted her to move on. I need to talk to Jason, I said. Face to face. Not yet, Marcus cautioned. Right now, you need to secure your assets before Linda drains them completely. Where is your VA disability going? Joint checking account. That needs to change today. We'll go to the VA office and redirect those payments to a new account in your name only. What about the house? The Pattersons, they bought it in good faith. Marcus nodded. That is going to be messy. They're innocent victims here, just like you. But the sale was fraudulent, which means the deed transfer can potentially be voided. They'd get their money back from escrow, and the house would revert to you. They're good people. I don't want them to suffer because of what Linda did. They won't suffer, Marcus assured me. They'll be inconvenienced, but they'll get their money back. The person who is going to suffer is Linda. Because here is the thing, Mr. Mitchell, she might have thought you were going to die, but you didn't. And now she has got to deal with the consequences of committing fraud against a living person. What are the charges? Marcus started, counting on his fingers. Forgery. Fraud. Theft by deception. Wire fraud. If any of those transfers crossed state lines, and they did. That last one's a federal crime, 10 to 20 years. Frank let out a low whistle. She could go to prison. She could go to federal prison. For a long time, Marcus looked at me steadily. The question is, Mr. Mitchell, is that what you want? Or do you want something else? I thought about it. 41 years of marriage. 2 children. Grandchildren I barely knew because Linda always had some excuse for why visits were inconvenient. A lifetime of memories, most of them good, some of them painful, all of them ours. Did I want to send her to prison? I want the truth, I said finally. I want to understand why, and I want back what is mine. Everything else? I shook my head. I'll decide that when I know the full story. Marcus nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then let's go get the truth. Over the next 2 weeks, we built our case. Marcus worked his contacts, carefully, officially, always by the book, to gather evidence. The forged signature on the house deed was confirmed by 2 independent handwriting experts. Bank records showed a systematic pattern of withdrawals over the past year, small amounts that added up to nearly $40,000 removed from our savings. Linda had been bleeding me dry long before the heart attack. We found out that the real estate transaction in Phoenix was scheduled to close in 14 days. Linda had submitted all her paperwork, passed all her inspections, and was just waiting for the final signatures. She thought she was home free. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She had no idea I was coming. The 5 of us, Bobby, Earl, Frank, Ray, and me, met every day at Bobby's kitchen table, planning our next move. It felt like old times, in a way. 5 soldiers huddled over maps, strategizing, anticipating enemy movements. Except this time, the enemy was my own wife. Here is what we know, Marcus said during one of our planning sessions. Linda is staying with Jason in Phoenix. She has told him, we intercepted some emails, that you are brain dead with no hope of recovery, and that selling the house was necessary to pay your medical bills. So Jason doesn't know the truth. Apparently not. He thinks he is helping his mother through a tragedy, not participating in fraud. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. My son wasn't a criminal. He was just a pawn. What about Karen? I asked. My daughter? Marcus hesitated. That is less clear. Karen's emails with Linda are more guarded. She has asked questions about the medical situation that Linda has deflected. My read is that Karen suspects something is wrong, but doesn't know what. She always was the sharp one, I murmured. The Phoenix condo closes in 12 days, Marcus continued. The way I see it, we have 2 options. Option 1. We file charges now, freeze Linda's assets, and stop the transaction. It'll be a long legal battle, but she'll eventually face consequences. And option 2? Marcus smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile that reminded me suddenly, powerfully, of his father in combat. Option 2, we let her think she is won. We let her show up to that closing, ready to sign the papers on her brand new condo. And then you walk in the door. You want me to ambush her? I want you to confront her on your terms, face to face. Let her see that the husband she left for dead is very much alive. Let her know that everything she has built on lies is about to come crashing down. Frank grinned. I like option 2. There is more, Marcus said. Because the original house was purchased with a VAB Act loan and is classified as a veteran's benefit property. The proceeds from selling it are restricted. They can only be used to purchase another eligible property, for the veteran meaning you, Mr. Mitchell. Not her, which means we can petition to have the new condo registered in your name instead of hers. She has been using restricted funds for a purchase she is not entitled to make. The title company will have to unwind the entire transaction once they're informed. So she shows up to sign papers for her new home, and instead discovers that the home now belongs to you, the husband she tried to bury. Bobby laughed, a deep, satisfied sound. Now that is poetic justice. I sat back in my chair, trying to process the plan. It was, frankly, a little bit crazy. It was perfect. What about the Pattersons? I asked. The people who bought my house. Already handled, I spoke with them yesterday. Once they understood the situation, and once I explained that their purchase was legally void due to fraud, they agreed to cooperate. They'll get their money back from escrow, and they're actually relieved. Mr. Patterson said he never felt quite right about how fast that sale happened. Good people. Good people, Marcus agreed. Now here is what we need to do over the next 12 days. The plan came together like a military operation, because that is what it was, really. 5 veterans and 1 FBI agent against one woman who thought she'd outsmarted everyone. Day 1. We filed paperwork with the VA to redirect my disability payments to a new account. Effective immediately. Day 2. We submitted evidence to the title company, handling the Phoenix transaction, informing them that the funds being used were from a fraudulently sold property and were restricted veterans' benefits. Day 3. I spoke with a lawyer, a former JAG officer, Marcus New, who began preparing civil charges against Linda for fraud and theft. Day 4. The title company confirmed they were halting the transaction pending investigation. Day 5. We got the real estate agent in Phoenix on board. She was horrified when she learned what Linda had done and agreed to proceed with the closing as if nothing had changed, while actually preparing to transfer the property to me instead. Days 6 through 11. We waited. We prepared. We rehearsed. And on day 12, I boarded a plane to Phoenix with my 4 brothers beside me. It was time to face my wife. Phoenix in November is a strange kind of beautiful. The desert sun hangs low in a sky so blue it hurts to look at. And the air smells like dust and sage and something ancient. I'd never spent much time in Arizona. Linda always preferred beach vacations. But as our rental car wound through the suburbs toward the title company office, I found myself thinking this might be a nice place to start over, if I survived the next few hours. Bobby was driving. Earl sat beside him, calm. Frank and Ray were in the back with me, flanking me like bodyguards. Nobody spoke. There wasn't anything left to say. We'd planned this moment down to the minute. Now it was time to execute. The title company was in a bland office park near Scottsdale, one of those beige stucco buildings that could be a dentist's office or a law firm. Or, in this case, the place where my wife expected to sign papers on her stolen future. Marcus had arrived the day before to coordinate with local authorities. He met us in the parking lot, dressed in a dark suit that made him look every inch the federal agent. "She is inside," he said quietly. "Arrived about 10 minutes ago with Jason. They're in the conference room with the escrow officer." "Jason's here," my heart clenched. "He thinks he is here to support his mother through a difficult purchase. He still doesn't know the truth." I took a deep breath. This was the part I'd been dreading most. Not confronting Linda. I'd made my peace with that. But Jason, my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, to throw a football, to drive a stick shift, the man who'd grown up while I was deployed, who'd become a stranger to me in ways I was only now beginning to understand. I didn't want him to see his mother destroyed. But I also couldn't let her crime go unanswered. "Let's go," I said. We walked through the front doors in formation, me in the center, my brothers around me like an honor guard. The receptionist looked up, startled by 5 old men moving with military precision. "We're here for the Mitchell closing," Marcus said, flashing his badge. "Conference room B." She didn't argue. The hallway stretched ahead of us like the final approach to an objective 20 feet. 15. 10. I could hear voices through the door. Linda's voice, laughing at something, sounding relaxed and happy, and completely unaware that her world was about to end. The conference room was standard corporate long table, leather chairs, water pitchers, a window overlooking the parking lot. 3 people sat at the table. Linda, Jason, and a young woman in a business suit who must have been the escrow officer. Linda saw me first. I will never forget her face in that moment. The color draining away like water from a broken glass. Her mouth opening, closing, opening again. Her eyes going wide with a terror I'd never seen in 41 years of marriage. "Hal," she whispered. "Hello, Linda." Jason jumped to his feet. "What? I thought you were. Mom said you were brain dead." I kept my eyes on Linda. Permanently unconscious. Going to die any day. "Is that what she told you?" She said the doctors had no hope, she said. She lied. Linda found her voice. Hal, I can explain. Can you? I stepped further into the room. My brothers filed in behind me, taking positions along the wall. Can you explain forging my signature to sell our house? Can you explain stealing my VA benefits? Can you explain disappearing while I was lying in a hospital bed fighting for my life? I thought you were going to die. The words burst out of her like a confession. The doctors said there was almost no chance. Almost no chance isn't no chance. And even if I had died, that wouldn't have given you the right to forge documents and commit fraud. The escrow officer was looking between us with growing alarm. I am sorry. What exactly is happening here? Marcus stepped forward. Ma'am, I am Special Agent Marcus Garcia with the FBI. This property closing is being halted due to evidence of fraud and theft. The funds Mrs. Mitchell intended to use for this purchase were obtained through the illegal sale of a veteran's benefit property using forged documents. FBI? Linda's voice cracked. You brought the FBI? You committed federal crimes, Linda. Wire, fraud, forgery. Theft of veterans' benefits. What did you expect? Jason was staring at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Mom, is this true? Did you forge Dad's signature? Linda's silence was answer enough. Oh my God. Jason sank back into his chair. Oh my God, Mom. What did you do? I did what I had to do. Linda's composure finally shattered. Tears streamed down her face, her voice rising to something between a scream and a sob. 41 years, Hal. 41 years, Hal. 41 years of being an army wife. Of waiting for you to come home. Of raising our children alone while you were off playing soldier. And what did I get for it? A husband who loved his uniform more than his family. So you decided to steal from me while I was dying? I decided to finally put myself first. She was standing now, her chair knocked backward. When you collapsed, when the doctor said you might never wake up, I realized this was my chance. My only chance to have the life I deserved. A life without you. The words hit me like bullets. But unlike bullets, these I'd been expecting. You planned this, I said quietly. The power of attorney you had me sign 2 weeks before my heart attack. The bank withdrawals over the past year, you'd been setting this up for months. Linda's eyes flickered just for a moment, but I saw it. The confirmation I'd been looking for. You were going to leave me anyway, I continued. The heart attack just gave you a convenient excuse. I wasn't going to leave you. I was going to. She stopped. Caught herself, but too late. You were going to what, Linda? What were you planning to do? She didn't answer, but the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. Mom. Jason's voice was barely a whisper. Where are you going to? Linda spun toward her son. Jason, no. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Because right now it sounds like you were planning to take everything Dad had even before he got sick. It sounds like you were going to destroy him one way or another. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Jason was crying now. A 40-year-old man crying in front of strangers, watching his family implode. Help me understand how my mother, the woman who taught me right from wrong, could do something like this. Linda had no answer. For the first time in 41 years, she had absolutely nothing to say. Marcus cleared his throat. Mrs. Mitchell, at this time I am required to inform you that you are under investigation for multiple federal charges. You are not under arrest yet, but I strongly advise you to obtain legal counsel. I am going to prison. Linda's voice was small now. Defeated. That depends on a lot of factors. Marcus looked at me. Including whether Mr. Mitchell chooses to press charges. Everyone turned to me. Linda. Jason. The escrow officer. My brothers. all waiting to see what the dead man would do with his second chance at life. I looked at Linda, really looked at her, for the first time since entering the room. This woman I'd loved for 4 decades. The mother of my children, my partner through wars and peacetime, through joy and grief, through all the messy, complicated years of building a life together. I didn't recognize her anymore. Here is what is going to happen, I said slowly. This condo purchase is void. The property will be registered in my name. That has already been arranged with the title company. The money you stole from our joint accounts will be repaid. Our house in Nashville will be returned to me once the legal process is complete. And then, Linda whispered, and then, I never want to see you again. You can keep whatever personal belongings you brought from Tennessee. You can have the divorce you clearly wanted, but everything else, the property, the money, the benefits I earned with my service, that is it. You are not pressing charges. I shook my head slowly. Sending you to prison won't give me back the years I wasted loving someone who was plotting against me. It won't heal the damage to our family. It'll just make me bitter and angry for whatever time I have left. I paused. I survived Vietnam. I survived the Gulf. I survived a heart attack and 47 days in a coma. I am not going to let you be the thing that finally destroys me. Linda stared at me. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something in her eyes that might have been regret, or maybe it was just fear. After 41 years, I could no longer tell the difference. Jason, I turned to my son. I know you didn't know. I know she manipulated you. But I am going to need some time before we can talk about where we go from here. Jason nodded, tears still streaming. Dad, I am so sorry. I should have questioned it. You trusted your mother. That is not a sin. We'll figure it out. Just not today. I walked out of that conference room with my brothers beside me, leaving behind the wreckage of my old life. The desert sun was blinding after the dim office interior, and I stood for a moment in the parking lot, letting the heat wash over me. Bobby stepped up beside me. How do you feel? I considered the question carefully. How did I feel? Angry? Sad? Relieved? Vindicated? All of those things. Maybe. None of them, maybe. I feel alive, I said finally. For the first time in 41 years, I feel completely alive. Earl put his hand on my other shoulder. Frank and Ray gathered close. 5 old soldiers standing in a parking lot in Phoenix. Survivors of a different kind of war. So what now? Frank asked. I looked at my brothers, these men who had crossed the country to save me, who had stood by me when my own family had abandoned me, who had helped me reclaim my life from the woman who tried to steal it. Now, I said, we go home. I've got a house to reclaim, a life to rebuild, and about 50 years of friendship to catch up on. Bobby grinned. Road trip. Road trip. We climbed into the rental car, 5 veterans heading east toward Nashville, toward whatever came next. The desert stretched out behind us, vast and empty and full of possibilities. I thought about Linda, alone in that conference room with the ruins of her scheme scattered around her. I thought about Jason, struggling to reconcile the mother he'd loved with the stranger he'd discovered. I thought about the Pattersons, who would get their money back and find a new home without the shadow of fraud hanging over it. And I thought about myself, Harold Mitchell, 65 years old, veteran, survivor, a man who had died and come back, who had lost everything and reclaimed it, who had learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones most capable of betraying you. But I'd also learned something else. Brotherhood is thicker than blood. Promises made in foxholes outlast vows made at altars. And no matter how dark the night gets, there is always someone willing to walk through it with you, if you are lucky enough to find them. I was lucky, luckier than I'd ever known. The road stretched out ahead of us, long and straight and full of possibility. I rolled down the window, let the desert air rush over my face, and smiled. I was going home.